Hello, and welcome to this short video titled Licensing Your Work as Open. Today, I'll be sharing some information about some of the material you'll be creating for this course and how your instructor would like to use it to help future students and faculty members. I'm going to talk about this concept of open in relation to educational resources. We'll discuss how open materials can create more representative and equitable learning opportunities for everyone. And most of all, what this means for your work. I'd like to start by asking you to consider the traditional cycle of publication for many of the textbooks and learning resources that you find in your classes. They all start with an idea, often grounded in research, that an author or multiple authors formulate. There's an extensive writing process, and there's back and forth in some form of peer review with other experts and scholars. Changes are made before the text or online resource is sent to the publishing or production house for printing or design. And finally, you as the student buy this material for your class. And we all know that textbooks and resources for classes can be expensive. Inevitably, the process starts all over once new material is created or discovered that makes the previous versions obsolete. While that model is what you commonly encounter with your textbooks and other learning materials, there is a whole world of what are called open educational materials that has a creation process. Much like a traditional text, it all starts with an idea or concept that's grounded in research, the writing process, and oftentimes the feedback and review of other experts in the field of study. Where it differs, though, is in how it's released. Instead of working through a publishing house, these materials are curated and shared directly with students and other educators with minimal cost, often if they need to be printed, but most often at zero cost. And the beauty of this is that the process is renewable. When updates to the content are needed, others can easily make them without the need for a traditional publishing process. These materials do have a name, and the definition that is shared by the Hewlett Foundation is a popular one. These open educational resources, or OER, are teaching, learning, and research resources that reside in what is called the public domain, a place where people share content without the need for attribution. Or they've been released under what is called an intellectual property license that allows others to use and repurpose the content. Before we dig deeper, let's talk a little bit about intellectual property. The thing about intellectual property is that we all have it, and I'll explain. Intellectual property is the creations of your mind. These are things like inventions, art, written words. When you create a project or write a paper for a class, this is actually your intellectual property, and you own it. One thing to note here is that intellectual property needs to be in a fixed form. By this, I mean that it needs to be recorded in some way. Let's say that you share an idea about a new app with one of your friends and he goes out and creates it. Well, it may be unethical for him to do so. If your idea was not written down in some form, it doesn't count. So let's talk about how you can license and protect your intellectual property. We've likely heard the term copyright. Copyright is basically how you license your intellectual property. And Creative Commons, an international organization based around the sharing of knowledge, has created standardized licenses that allow you to specify if and how you permit your intellectual property to be used. The CC that you see stands for Creative Commons, and there are 4 components that can make up a license. You can specify if you'd like attribution or credit when somebody uses your work. Most people select, at a minimum, this option. The equal sign tells others that you can use your work, but not make any changes to it. And the reverse arrow is share alike, and this means that others that share out your work must do so under the same license. Finally, you can specify that people can use your work, remix it, or distribute it, but cannot do so for commercial purposes. At this point, people usually ask a fair number of questions, and one of those that you may be wondering yourself. Why would someone license their intellectual property for others to use freely? There's a variety of reasons. However, the most common include a belief that knowledge should be accessible to all, not just to those who can pay the price for a text or journal article. There's also the understanding that authors of open works can modify and change their information much more nimbly and quickly. And then there's this idea of allowing others to contextualize the content in a way that better reflects the diversity and includes representations of the lived experiences of those who are using the content. At this point, you may also be wondering what all of this means for your work in your class. Because your instructor values the work that you do, they'd like to showcase some of your project work within an open resource. When an instructor does something like this, it's a form of what we call open pedagogy, which is a practice that allows students like yourselves to be active contributors to the process. I'd like for you to pause and consider the typical types of assignments that you encounter in classes. In OER circles, we tend to call these disposable assignments, and this quote sums it up well. These are assignments that students complain about doing and faculty complain about grading. They're assignments that add no real value to the world. After a student spends 3 hours creating it, a teacher might spend 30 minutes grading it, and then it's given back and the student throws it away. Does it sound familiar? I know that I have both given these assignments and done them as a student. But on the flip side, open pedagogy is a form of renewable assignment. As this quote states, students see content as something that they can curate and create, and to help them see themselves as contributing members to the public marketplace of ideas. In short, your ideas are valued and shared out with others so that you are not just a consumer of information, but a creator of it as well. And learning that is part of the valued experience of education, that you absolutely have something to contribute and give back. But deciding that you want to license your work as open is your choice as a student. Your instructor will reiterate this, but there is absolutely no penalty to any assignment if you decide you don't want it to be included as openly licensed. In fact, at UVA, you need to opt in, and we'll talk about how you do that next. Your instructor will ask you to sign a paper, somewhat like this one, that explains the type of license that they'll be using for this open resource, and for you to have an option of choosing the type of license you'd like to include for your specific work. Although your instructor may opt to license the book as, say, CC BY, you can specify within what you'd like your own work to be licensed as. For instance, CC BY NC, which is attribution and for non-commercial purposes. After reading the form and selecting your license and indicating how you'd like to acknowledge the text, make sure to fill out all parts. Your instructor will retain a copy and provide you with one that they can keep and one for you as well. Fairly standard license choices for open work tend to include CC BY, meaning that you would like attribution for your work, CC BY SA, indicating that in addition to attribution, you'd also like any new or derivative work to be shared out with the same license, or an CC BY NCSA license that indicates all of the previous with an addition that it cannot be used for commercial purposes. Select the license variation that best fits how you would like your work to be used. If you determine that you would not like your work to be made openly available, please indicate this to your instructor. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me or to one of your many subject librarians. We're always happy to help.